Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we're plunging into a really detailed singular account from an international student. It's about their journey, quite a challenging one, through a master's program at the University of Windsor in Canada. Just imagine, dedicating years, significant resources to a dream, only to find yourself caught in this maze of alleged misconduct, shifting rules, and, well, institutional resistance. So our mission today is really to unpack these sources. We've got emails, notes, legal filings, even public blog posts from the student. We want to distill the key allegations and explore the bigger picture, the systemic issues they seem to point towards, things like academic integrity, student vulnerability, institutional accountability. We'll follow the sequence of events as presented, looking for those surprising details and insights into how these complex situations can really unfold.
Right. And what's quite striking about this material is how it presents not just, one person's story, but potentially a really compelling case study. It shows how individuals can perceive and navigate these very complex systems when they're facing huge challenges. We'll be focusing on the claims made, the reported responses from the institution, and considering what it all implies for understanding academic environments, especially, I think, for international students who often have unique experiences.
Okay, so the story starts with this really powerful image, doesn't it? A student's dream, leaving Brazil, seeking safety, and pursuing a specific master's in acoustics engineering in Canada. This wasn't just about academics. It was seen as the foundation for a new family life. Very carefully laid plans, choosing the program, the location.
Exactly. And that initial framing really highlights the immense personal investment, the trust placed in the university. For this student, getting accepted into a Canadian university was presented as, well, the only practical way for his wife, who didn't have English skills or formal certifications, to emigrate with him. So that immediate reliance on the university's promise really underscores how initial missteps could just fundamentally change everything for a student, setting a really difficult tone right from the get-go.
And what a misstep it sounds like. The student gets there January 2022, all set for acoustics engineering, only to find out at registration they're actually enrolled in industrial engineering. The student calls this a foundational error. You can imagine the immediate confusion, the dismay. Those careful plans suddenly seem threatened.
It's a truly jarring way to start, isn't it? The very first step is completely different from what you intended. And this error, as the source presents it, becomes this perceived pattern of institutional negligence that sort of defines the whole experience afterwards. We learn the student then spends, 9 months trying to adapt, trying to shift their research towards vibration mechanics and NVH noise, vibration harshness within industrial engineering. That required huge adjustments, personally and academically.
But just adapting wasn't enough, according to the student's account. The source describes the first supervisor's behavior becoming increasingly, erratic and unprofessional. And this is where things get concerning. The supervisor allegedly pushed for topic changes, made requests way outside normal academic supervision, like asking for detailed schematics for their private non-university projects. And maybe even more striking, reportedly demanding access to the student's personal LinkedIn account for their own use, asking the student to use their free trial for the supervisor stuff. The student saw this as, quote, a blatant violation of etiquette and exploitative.
Yeah, that situation really shows how that inherent power imbalance between a supervisor and student can potentially be, exploited. It can seemingly transform academic guidance into something closer to personal service. It represents, if accurate, a pretty clear ethical violation. It undermines the trust you expect in higher education. This pattern, as described, really raises critical questions about the ethical duties of supervisors and the boundaries of their authority.
And the situation apparently escalated quickly. In June 2022, it wasn't even the same supervisor, right? A different professor reportedly publicly shamed the student just for being 4 minutes late to a graduate seminar because they stopped at the washroom.
4 minutes. Yeah.
Called the student a liar, declared a personal deal in managing their affairs, and then threats of expulsion, demands for tuition. It's hard to grasp how 4 minutes could lead to such a significant threat.
It really highlights the potential for public humiliation and these disproportionate responses within academia, especially worrying for international students paying hefty tuition. The source points out this threat came right after the student had paid for their second term, which just adds to the perceived pressure. It's a striking example, allegedly, of how a minor thing could be weaponized against someone seen as vulnerable.
And the alleged arbitrary control just kept coming. October 2022, the supervisor reportedly insists on another topic change, and the quote is just, the laboratory is mine, the funds are mine, and I do as I please. The source presents this as wasting resources and just starkly showing that power imbalance.
Yeah, that direct quote, if accurate, gives you a real insight into the alleged arbitrary use of authority. It could potentially stifle academic freedom. So the student formally requested a supervisor change through the graduate office. But the narrative describes the only available option being that same seminar professor who'd already shown hostility. Yeah. This was seen by the student as being deliberately funneled into more problems, turning their studies into what they describe as a fight against, systemic sabotage and bias.
Wow. But despite these alleged roadblocks, the student's account shows, incredible resilience, resourcefulness too. After getting assigned that same professor, the one who'd shown animosity, the student basically relocated their entire research setup to their home.
Right.
To get around what they call deliberate roadblocks, like emails taking weeks for a reply, faulty lab gear, they bought their own stuff, a 3D printer, advanced measurement devices, using their own limited funds.
It really illustrates the significant burden placed on students, doesn't it? Especially international students. They might feel they have to self-fund and work independently because of a perceived lack of institutional support. The source even details how the student's personal computer was apparently better than the outdated lab machines, letting them keep working without university help. That's a huge shift from what you'd normally expect in terms of academic support.
And the source really emphasizes the emotional, the financial strain. They shared personal milestones, wife's pregnancy in March 2023, son born November 2023, detailing sleepless nights, doing research alone. But they note their pleas for just some understanding went totally unacknowledged by the supervisor.
And that really highlights the critical importance of support systems for graduate students, and in this case, the alleged complete lack of them, especially for international students juggling intense academic work with huge personal life changes. It underscores a perceived lack of empathy, of consideration for the human side of academia.
And then, after all that struggle, another blow. Late October 2023, the student passes their preliminary thesis defense, but with major corrections. But then, May 2024, the supervisor allegedly files this groundless complaint of data falsification with the university senate. Apparently, with no evidence offered, no prior attempt to resolve it, the student saw it as a calculated strike.
Well, that certainly raises serious questions about how academic integrity concerns are handled, and the supervisor's role in that process. The source describes this as flouting basic academic norms, where supervisors are usually expected to, oversee data issues, guide corrections, not jump straight to formal complaints without talking to the student first.
So, what does this all mean financially for a student trying to budget? According to this account, the university allegedly weaponized that data falsification claim to keep the student enrolled longer, extracting another, CAD $8,000 in tuition every 4 months. The total cost ballooned to nearly CAD $65,000, double the advertised CAD $32,000. That's a massive difference.
It really sheds light on the immense financial pressures international students can face. They often have significant financial strain to begin with, and it highlights the huge implications of escalating unadvertised costs. It suggests a potential system where academic hurdles could directly lead to, bigger bills.
So, feeling unsupported, the student seeks help from Community Legal Aid, CLA, a pro bono service, but they found CLA had what they described as an inherent bias because it's affiliated with the university. CLA apparently recommended pleading guilty to data falsification. The student refused, only conceded an honest mistake in an apology letter. That advice, plead guilty, especially when the student claims innocence, that's quite striking.
It certainly puts a spotlight on potential ethical dilemmas, doesn't it? When support services might have perceived conflicts of interest with the institution they're part of. The source even claims CLA accused the student of obstruction and closed their file when the student questioned their impartiality, even though the student apparently sent a positive reply saying they trusted them.
It just illustrates the complex pressures students might face in these kinds of situations.
And the bureaucratic delays sound huge as well, according to this account. They filed a Freedom of Information request, FIPA, July 2024. The university allegedly insistently mocked it, mischaracterized it, took over 3 months instead of the mandated 30 days. Then the oversight body, the Information and Privacy Commissioner, the IPC, took 5 months, December 24 to April 25, just to overrule an appeal. Students saw this as a total failure to hold the university accountable. Well, FIPA policies are designed precisely for transparency, for timely access to information, especially crucial academic records. These alleged delays, the mischaracterizations, they certainly imply a perceived lack of institutional transparency and accountability. The student's account suggests a system where legal timelines are allegedly just ignored, adding to their sense of being blocked at every turn.
So what does this mean for actually getting the thesis done? The student claims over 20 emails to advisors just went unanswered, or they got replies described as perfunctory or mocking, causing months of delays, risking graduation. That must have been incredibly frustrating.
It really underscores the fundamental importance of timely feedback, of communication, and academic supervision. When that's allegedly absent, it can severely block a student's progress, create huge stress and uncertainty. The source also notes that university guidelines apparently prohibit supervisors from withholding support just because a student filed a complaint, a policy allegedly violated here.
Right. And after all that, the thesis defense process itself allegedly got hit with arbitrary rules. After submitting a revised thesis, the student alleges the supervisor just invented an arbitrary rebuttal procedure, something not in any official policy. Then the dean's decision letter, March 2025, titled Just Memo. Reportedly vague, unethical, lacking formality, no watermark, just a digital signature. And it allegedly ignored the student's rebuttal, focused on minor errors instead. It sounds like a very ad hoc, unprofessional response.
Yeah, that narrative really calls into question basic principles: due process, fairness, transparency, and evaluations. Actions like that, if they occurred as described, could completely undermine those principles. It gives the impression, as the source states, that the supervisor and committee were sort of making up rules as they went along to ensure a specific outcome.
And the alleged violations continued. The student requested a new committee for reevaluation under Bylaw 55. That's a rule meant to ensure a fresh, impartial look, right?
Exactly. A second chance with different eyes.
But the student claims the exact same panel of evaluators was assigned, leading to the same result. The student saw that as just blatant proof of bias.
Well, that speaks directly to the importance of impartiality in appeals. The whole purpose of reevaluation is undermined if it's not impartial. Allegedly violating the intent of Bylaw 55, that seriously compromises the fairness of the process. From the student's view, it implied the outcome was fixed regardless.
But the source also mentions escalating things to the Windsor Police Service, the WPS, reporting serious misconduct, alleged fraud, obstruction of justice by university officials. But these complaints were apparently just dismissed. Civil matters, no investigation. The student highlights this contrast. Alleged institutional fraud is civil, but unrelated family incidents involving the student were reportedly treated much more seriously, leading to immediate police action.
That does raise significant questions about how those lines between civil and criminal are drawn, and the implications if police seem reluctant to investigate certain complaints, especially involving powerful institutions. The source claims this creates a very clear double standard in how justice is perceived to be applied.
Then the alleged retaliation becomes intensely personal, January 2025. This cascade of events over just 4 days. The student described it as dismantling my life with ruthless precision. Fired from their job, the owner, allegedly a professor close to the supervisor.
Wow.
Then the failed thesis defense, notice denying a promised second defense. 2 days later, their wife files what the student calls a baseless domestic violence claim. The next day, the student's arrested based on that, released with a restraining order, barred from home, cut off from their infant son.
The source presents that sequence as deeply connected, a disturbing pattern of alleged targeted retaliation after the student reported misconduct. It powerfully underscores the devastating impact perceived institutional actions can have on someone's entire life, far beyond just academics.
So now, exiled in Brazil, the student is fighting legally for custody of their son, Isaac, back in Canada. The source states the mother's dependent visa had reportedly expired, and alleges she was coerced, manipulated by university affiliates to stay in Canada, essentially holding the son hostage. It just underlines the immense emotional weight, the separation, the precariousness for international students.
Absolutely. This critically examines the unique vulnerabilities of international students and their dependents. Their legal status is so often tied to enrollment, and that can allegedly be exploited. The source describes the huge logistical, emotional challenges of fighting that kind of battle from thousands of miles away. It adds another layer of personal tragedy onto the academic struggle.
And the alleged retaliation even went public, didn't it? The student posted on LinkedIn about their thesis and was met with what they call a vicious campaign from a liar finder account, identified itself as a student at University of Windsor, posting fraud alert, revealing names of committee members' non-public info. The student saw this as insider retaliation for filing with the Human Rights Tribunal, and it ended with this chilling line, "Now, for your own sake, please do yourself a favor and move on."
That really brings the ethical implications of online harassment into focus, and the potential for perceived institutional influence, especially if non-public information is being leaked. It suggests an environment of intimidation, seemingly designed to silence someone speaking out.
The source makes a really strong, maybe even shocking comparison here, explicitly likens the university's alleged conduct to the lawless favelas of Brazil, describing criminal organizations disguised as universities, luring people with false promises, exploiting them, then discarding them. It also alleges police and city collusion because of economic ties.
That analogy as presented is a powerful statement, isn't it? About a perceived total lack of accountability. The exploitation of vulnerable people within a system that should be regulated, should uphold integrity. It's starkly contrasted with overt criminality. It raises that provocative question, when does an institution's self-preservation start to look like something more sinister, behaving in ways the source calls barbaric and tyrannic?
And on an even heavier note, the source brings up reports of international student suicides. At least 47 in 2023, many Punjabi students mentioned, linked to financial stress, exploitation. It alleges universities occlude, basically hide or don't systematically report these deaths to protect their reputations.
It highlights the grave responsibility institutions have to track and address student mental health crises, and the immense pressures, financial and personal, on international students that can tragically lead to this. The claim that these deaths are occluded from scrutiny to protect reputations and revenue, well, that raises profound ethical concerns if true.
And one final point from the source, kind of showing the alleged lack of basic academic rigor. An anecdote where the supervisor, Dr. Novak, apparently insisted the decibel dB was always dimensionless. The student had to correct him about its physical intensity in acoustics watts per square meter. For the student to correct the professor on something so fundamental, that must have been quite something.
That specific anecdote, as described, does reflect on the implications for the quality of education, the mentorship, when such knowledge gaps are alleged at the supervisory level. It certainly impacts how a student perceives the academic environment and the expertise they're supposed to be gaining.
So wrapping it all up, the student describes this whole ordeal costing nearly CAD $65,000 3 years of their life. Their future impacted, referees gone, family sacrificed. They frame it not just as a failed defense, but as a failed system.
And that powerfully connects back to those broader themes we discussed. Trust, the long-term devastating consequences when institutions are perceived to fail. It goes far beyond just an academic record. It impacts careers, personal lives. The human cost detailed here is really profound.
Yet, despite everything, the setbacks, the immense personal loss described, the student states they no longer seek to be reinstated. I seek to be vindicated. I seek justice. I seek reform. They detail submitting evidence formally to numerous bodies: Attorney General, Ombudsman, CLA, the Human Rights Tribunal, police, consular officials. It shows this unwavering determination to demand accountability from what they portray as a truly formidable system.
It really illustrates the immense dedication, the perseverance needed to challenge large institutions, and the different avenues people might pursue for redress, even facing huge resistance and alleged collusion across systems. It speaks to a deep conviction for change, not just fixing their own situation.
So this deep dive, drawing entirely from the provided sources, offers this powerful, though obviously one-sided, account of alleged systemic failures within a university. It really highlights the immense challenges students, especially international ones, can face navigating these complex academic and legal systems.
Absolutely. And what this narrative consistently underscores is the critical need for transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct in our educational institutions. The student's account describes this relentless battle, facing a system that seemed, from their perspective, to bend rules, dismiss concerns, leverage its influence. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the inherent challenges in holding large institutions accountable, especially when their perceived self-interest seems to clash with their stated mission to educate and protect students?
We invite you, the listener, to really consider the multiple layers of these claims. What might they suggest about the critical need for robust oversight, for clear, consistent policies within our educational systems? What stands out to you about this deep dive?